Let me straighten out my... Oh, God fucking damn it!
Radio Free Innsmouth, episode 198. This week, it's going to be about a Japanese band that most of you probably haven't heard of, known as MergingMoon. But rest assured, they are great. They are one of the best melodic death metal bands out there, but, what the heck is melodic death metal? Every episode could be somebody's first show. So to kind of put this band in their proper context, we need to figure out what the hell this melodic death metal stuff is. Most people know death metal. It sounds like... But if you go up north to Scandinavia in the early to mid 90s, you got a bunch of guys from Sweden going like and then you go over to Finland, you got people going like Okay, yeah, fine. Technically, slightly before all that, you had these guys in Greece going like but that shit was usually a lot slower and like more black metal. But yeah, you can see guys up north.
Good day. How's it going? Okay.
Wearing a lot of those Greek band shirts and then doing stuff like... So yeah, the Greek stuff was an influence, but this modern melodic death metal genre pretty much comes out of Scandinavia. And when they say melodic in melodic death metal, what they actually mean is something I went over last week. They mean consonant. So you have these very pleasant sounding melodies, but you're doing like over it. This stuff kind of spread all over the world, but it really took off in two places. The first place was United Stay, where it kind of turned into early 2000s metalcore. Ugh.
That's no good.
But to be fair, some bands did get it right, like Garden of Shadows and Vehemence, that put out some of my favorite death metal of all time. But then where it got even bigger, surprisingly, was Japan. Initially, it was with very traditional sounding death metal bands like Intestine Balism that still played very brutal stuff, but incorporated a lot of melodic death metal elements. But then a very specific variety of melodic death metal took off over there, and yes, there are varieties. Even going back to Sweden in the early 90s, you kind of had like two ways to do this stuff, and a lot of bands would even do one way on their first album and then the second way on their second. So to give an example of the first variety, here's a great band with a very stupid band name. They're called A Canarus Quintet, and on their early stuff they played this first variety of melodic death metal where, despite being melodic death metal, it's still very weird and strange and extreme. The guitars, they don't play harmonies. Instead, you have each guitar doing something very different, and they kind of interlock in weird ways. And the song structures are much more death metal-y, extreme metal-y. They don't have verses and choruses the way that, like a normal, more pop-influenced band would. So that's the first kind of melodic death metal you run into. But then there's the second one, and this is the stuff more people are familiar with. And again, for an example, this will go to the second Canarus Quintet album. So this style is usually more derided by more hardcore death metal fans, but I find that it can be just as fun. It's definitely good gym music. There's a lot more like thrash metal and 80s heavy metal to it. The songs are structured more simply, and there's like more of a groove to it. There's definite verses and choruses and like catchy bits, Here's the solo break, play the cock rock shit, that kind of stuff. That's what the second type of melodic death metal to emerge was, and it's what most people know as melodic death metal nowadays. Good examples of like the original first type would be the first two At the Gates albums, the first Eucharist album, Miscreant, Decameron, that kind of stuff. And then the second kind is, that's like the last two At the Gates albums, the second Eucharist album, early In Flames, that kind of shit. But even that second subtype, there was a specific variety of it coming out of Finland that was much more influenced by 80s power metal instead of thrash metal, and that was what took off in Japan. Because if you know one thing about Japanese metal, they love their shreddy solos and their catchy choruses. And if you know two things about Japanese metal, you know that whenever they get a new toy to play with, they're gonna do some weird shit with it that you probably wouldn't have thought of with your puny Western intellect. A good band band to begin our examination of the Japanese melodic death metal scene would be The Devil Within, simply because this band is a supergroup formed by members of some of the leading Japanese melodic death metal bands. This band features the talents of members of Thousand Eyes, Undead Corporation, and MergingMoon, the main band that we're covering. I promise we'll get to them. This is more of a matrix through which to examine their context within the greater metal scene. But yeah, there's definitely lots of power metal and a shitload of 80s thrash metal influence running through this. Very, very much Castlevania core. I've used that term before if you wanted to know what that was. It's stuff that sounds like this. Some people might even say this band sounds kind of anime. I don't know. But yeah, that's Devil Within, and they're notable, like I said, for having members of those three larger bands. The first band being Thousand Eyes, who, of course, take their band name from a song by
Chuck Schuldiner's band Death. Good band, actually.
a song title which has always puzzled me, because if you know the Misfits, you know Danzig, you know he's got a song about 20 eyes, that's a lot of eyeballs. But then here comes big man Chuck Schuldiner swinging his dick, singing about like, am I crazy, or is Chuck Schuldiner trying to big dog a nigga?
This shit is not cool.
제가 V앱을 너무 안 한다고.
Yeah, I guess it could be that the Misfits song is about a movie monster and the Death song is about mass surveillance. But that's boring. I want my post-mortem beef. Anyways, Thousand Eyes. Both the guitarist and the drummer for Devil Within are from Thousand Eyes, who play a pretty interesting take on melodic death metal, in that the death metal in melodic death metal is absolutely present. This sounds like a fucking Morbid Angel riff. Then watch what it goes into. This crazy, like, neoclassical power metal heavy lead guitar style stuff. Very soulful with the guitar leads, and they're big on the harmonies. But yeah, these guys are notable for being a lot heavier than your standard sort of very power metal influenced melodic death metal band. I guess you could say they're a much more power metal-y take on Intestine Bailism in terms of switching between very heavy stuff and very melodic stuff. Like that Morbid Angel riff. And then it goes into this. That's pretty wacky, and it's pretty interesting. They got 3 albums. I've only heard 2 of them, but the 2 I've heard have both been exceptional for this style of very Castlevania-y, melodic death metal-y type stuff. And there's the 80s thrash bits, of course. If you're into like early At the Gates, any of that kind of thing, you'll probably dig these guys out. But that's Thousand Eyes, so that's where you're getting your guitarist and your drum section for this band. But the main songwriter for the band is Kensuke, who also plays guitars in Devil Within, but his main band is Undead Corporation. Now this band is a band that a lot of people make fun of me for liking. Essentially, you know the meme where there's like the 2 girls in the gym, and there's like the guy lifting, and they're like, oh my god, what do you think he's lifting to? And then she's like, probably hard rock or heavy metal. And then it like cuts to the guy, and he's listening to some like anime crap. Undead Corporation is a band made in the spirit of throwing this meme in a blender, because it is crazy hard rock heavy metal stuff with a bunch of anime crap in it, and it's very good and very catchy. They'll hit you with these big heavy like Carcass Heartwork style melodic riffs and the shrieky vocals leading into these like more kind of groove influenced riffs that then pull away to include these really cool like melodic guitars going against that very staccato rhythm section, and a whole lot of some clean female vocals, which I think she does a good job. I like when she sings, and it actually fits in well with the music. It all has like a very frenzied feel to it. They also have really fucked up, wacky music videos. And we're gonna get back into the death metal, don't you worry. Here it comes. So these are very much that second type of hyper pop influenced melodic death metal taken to a very pop music extreme. This is a cool little turnaround, watch this. Kind of playing that earlier riff backwards almost. Trade-off vocals. I don't know, if you had no taste, you might call these guys death metal evanescence, but that'd be fucking lame. Anyways, Undead Corporation are awesome, and I guess Metal Archives doesn't think they're metal because they're not on there. I don't know. They have like a fuck ton of albums. Like I've heard like 6 of them, and there's like 30. So if you like that stuff, there's plenty more of it. But the vocalist for Devil Within is the main reason I'm making this episode, because her name is YU, but then she just shortened it to U for her metal exploits. She's the vocalist for MergingMoon as her main band. She didn't start out as their vocalist. They actually had like a different guy doing stuff. But luckily, this was not a case of arch enemy where MergingMoon started out great, then got a female vocalist to make some money, and got like boring and stupid. These guys were great from the get-go. On their first album, Inauguration of the Black Sun. Pay attention to the keyboards here because they are important for this band. That's sort of like the main lead melody here, but you can tell the guitars under it are interlocking with it instead of just harmonizing with it. They're kind of doing their own thing. So there's a lot of that original style of melodic death metal going on here too. And a lot of weird change-ups. There's a lot of like straight up brutal death metal, but to that they do stuff like that. That was that keyboard melody from earlier being played on guitars, inserted into that breakdown riff. That's pretty interesting stuff. There's a lot of like weird time signatures going on here. They're a very prog band. And this is a Castlevania core riff. Like archetypal Castlevania core riff. That keyboard's back is singing a counterpoint melody to that initial sort of melodic motif it had going. And here's the clean vocals. This clean vocalist is actually still with the band. He also plays guitars, I believe. So when they switched vocalists, there wasn't really like a hard shock in style, because most of their clean vocals were done by this guy on both of their albums. He's got a really soulful tone that works well bouncing off of those death metal vocals. Here's some more cool melodic death metal, fighting vampires with a whip type stuff. So that's MergingMoon's first album when they had a dude doing the harsh vocals. And then he left and they got not you the listener, you the vocalist, who does the vocals for the Devil Within supergroup. But she shows up, and far from like selling out to kind of court a new audience, they actually considerably increased the complexity of their songwriting for their second album, Kami Kakushi, which is one of my favorite albums that I found out about, relatively recently, like maybe towards the end of last year, and it hasn't really left my metaphorical CD player since then. Really brutal vocals, of course, when she does the growly stuff. The keyboards are big on this album, and also what you'll notice on this album compared to the first one is a heavy electronic influence, particularly in the transitions between riff sections. Okay, this melody right here is very important. Please remember it in your head, because they are going to do a whole lot with the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Okay, that's going to be like the main driving motif of the song, but they are going to dissect it in some weird fucking ways. For instance, they'll move it up a bit and then play these sort of power metal backing guitars under that.
아니 원스 여러분들이
What are power metal backing guitars? That's a very good question. Okay, so let's say you got some 80s power metal on. We'll do Halloween. The lead instrument here is obviously vocals instead of keyboards, but the guitars are doing that same kind of thing where they're doing a very quick stream of chords, doing a very simple melody for the lead melodic instrument, in this case the vocals, to kind of careen over. That's what I mean by power metal backing chords. Usually they use them in a pre-chorus section like this one right here, and then it leads into the chorus, and he starts hitting the high notes and the guitars become even simpler as the vocals take more of a lead role. But that's a power metal backing riff, and that is what MergingMoon were utilizing in that first of many variations of that initial melody. See? Total power metal riff. Very interesting to do in death metal, but then watch what the next variation is. This is fucking weird. It's still based around that initial melody, but it's got these weird keyboards. The riffs are being bended all sorts of strange ways, and then they are resolved into this like death thrash riff with, of course, the very nasty vocals with you over it. And they are nasty. Here's another cool transition section with the clean male vocals from the guy that was always in the band. I think he's one of the main songwriters too. This is such a weird transition. That same looping melody is being dissected in even stranger ways as they bring in some 70s style keyboards, and everything starts to collapse under the weight of all this madness. And then, weird death metal riff, but this part right here, that's the same melody being worked over in this like weird, almost kind of like Meshuggah-ish chug riff. So yeah, that's like the 4 billion ways you can fuck around with. Every song on this album has that level of complexity in terms of messing around with melodic motifs, and most of them are also very long, like 7 to 9 minutes. So this is definitely an album with a lot of stuff for you to chew on. Now, I briefly mentioned Yu's vocals earlier when she was doing those nasty growls. She also does clean vocals, and I gotta say, she's one of the most talented vocalists I've seen in a metal band. To demonstrate that, we will look at how she does different varieties of clean vocals, often within the same verse. So here's her standard singing voice kind of playing off of the guitars in this very thick, buzzy synth line. And those nice little fill-in melodies that they excel at. And you know, this is like pretty standard, okay, you got a chick to do growls and cleans in your band. That's what it's gonna sound like usually if she's good at her job, and she is. She also does the shrieks, which are nasty. But now we're about to get into another style of clean vocals that she does. This very like soft voice. It's interesting over this like very harsh like electronic noise and guitars and such. Keyboards are great in this band. There's a lot of like weird dance music shit and like bits of video game music. Keeps it very interesting on these long songs. Maybe get folky, watch this. Okay, here comes more growls and another style of clean vocals. This style is very strange, kind of childish. Very like pop idol kinda, breathy. And then watch the transition here. She's gonna go into her normal voice. In the middle of a word. That was very interesting. And then these like weird spooky noises, those are nice. But yeah, she just does all kinds of crazy shit with her voice, and it fits all the crazy shit that the music is doing. Crazy instrumentation. This band is nuts, and they are so fun to listen to. They are great to find live videos of. I wish there was more. But definitely check out MergingMoon. Also Undead Corporation if you can tolerate what they were putting in, and Thousand Eyes if you like more brutal melodic death metal stuff. Check out all three, and Devil Within, because I don't know, I like all that shit. And hopefully you did too, or at least you like listening to me talk about it. Speaking of which, thanks for doing that, and I'll see you next time.
I didn't mean to break this a second time! It was an accident. But getting heated about gender relations, it happens. God fucking damn!